Hi, everyone. This is Shantine. Just to let you know, Andy did not receive an invite, so I sent her mine. That's why there's two Shantine Koplos on here. So one's Andy.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Okay, it looks like we've got the attendees here. So I will officially call the meeting to order at 1:31. And this is the meeting of the Legislative Committee of the Santa Clara, Santa Cruz County's Airport Community Roundtable. And this meeting is being conducted in accordance with the State of California Executive Order N29-20, dated March 17, 2020. All members of the Legislative Committee are participating in this meeting by video conference with no physical meeting location. Members of the public wishing to observe the meeting live may do so via Zoom at the link provided in the agenda. And as noted in the meeting agenda, members of the public may provide oral public comments for all items during the public comment period by registering via the link provided in the agenda. Any emails received by 10 a.m. today were forwarded to the committee. And I guess I'll check with Mr. Alverson, were any additional emails received today? I didn't receive any.
No, I did. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
No, I did not see any.
Okay, great, thank you.
And there appears to be one that came in just before the start of this meeting. I will forward it to you right now, Lisa. Just like 5 minutes ago, I received it.
Okay.
From a member of the public, Jennifer Landis.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so in order to record attendance, I'd like each member of the Legislative Committee to introduce themselves and say what city they're from.
Glenn Hendricks from Sunnyvale.
Kathy Watanabe from Santa Clara.
And Lisa Matichak from Mountain View. And then we also have the folks from ESA, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves.
Steve Alverson, facilitator.
Chris Sakura, backup facilitator.
Evan Wasserman, backup facilitator as well.
Thank you. And then we also have the attorney, Shantine. Did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. Shantine Koplo, attorney for Cities Association.
And then Andy, did you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, Andy Jordan with the Cities Association of Santa Clara County. I won't be here the whole time, but I just thought I'd pop in for a little bit. Thanks.
Thank you. So we have all members of the Legislative Committee here, and we will start with item 3, which is oral communications. And this portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the committee on any matters that are not on the agenda. And speakers are limited to 3 minutes. And you can speak on any topic you want that is not on the agenda, but state law prohibits the committee from acting on non-agenda items. And so if you would like to speak, if you could raise your blue hand. I don't see anyone on the phone, but I see one person with their hand, and that is Jennifer Landisman.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Just a quick confirmation from Christina or Evan that we are recording the meeting.
Yes,
it's being recorded.
Yes, we are.
Okay, good, great, thanks.
Okay, so Jennifer, you should be able, yep.
Hi, thank you very much. I wish that somehow the technical committee and the legislative could connect, because yesterday there was a very important presentation on the environmental review process. And the email that I sent a few minutes ago was to request that you make some time possibly for addressing the GLS procedures that are on the IFP gateway. Because there are a lot of issues related to that regarding metrics and all of the work that you do. My concern is that the legislative committee is a very nice way to deposit things to do for the future legislation, great ideas for the future. And in the meantime, the citizens who are affected and have been affected by this for 6 years now could use your help in addressing situations that are happening now. The GBAS project and a lot of other current procedures. So my request, and I guess you can't respond, but would be for you to somehow address this disconnect between the needs that we have right now and what's for the future. And that's one thing. The other is that you have excellent resources with ESA who can really help us ask the right questions regarding the current problems right now. And I just think it's a very sad loss to not have those resources put to work on things that we could use some help with now. One of the things that is needed is verification that in fact 4 CADEX have been published by the FAA for GLS procedures on the IFP gateway. Last time the IFP gateway was discussed, somebody said, oh, can Steve call the FAA and check? It's really burdensome to ask citizens to put FOIAs together. If you have an attorney here, I don't know if the attorney is, for what purpose the attorney is, what kind of a resource it is, if it's a governance issue of the roundtable or if it's actually to help on the issues that we deal with. But in the past, when we've not had information from the FAA, we've had to do a Freedom of Information request. The other thing that could be done is you could reach out to all the congressional representatives to find out if a CADEX has in fact been published for those GLS procedures. So far, the only entities that have any information about that are SFO, who kind of just nonchalantly kind of drop that little factoid at their GBAS updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on a topic not on the agenda? Okay, I don't see any more hands, so we'll bring it back to the committee. And we will go to item 4, which is the noise metrics. And at the last meeting of this committee, we reviewed the first draft of a noise metrics white paper. And we had a lot of questions and comments, and I think a good discussion about it. And then we asked Mr. Alverson if he could do the next draft of the white paper for us. And that's what we have before us today. And so I will, if you're okay with this, Mr. Alverson, turn it over to you to take us through this. And I'd like to make sure we get questions from the Ledge Committee and then open it up for public comment. And then we'll bring it back to the committee for further discussion. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate that. Just to provide a little bit of the history and background, because it's been several months since we met and talked about this. Member Hendricks brought to the committee at its last meeting a draft of this concept of addressing the issues surrounding metrics and focus on the fact that they don't appear to be effective, or at least the way that they're being used doesn't appear to be effective because FAA goes through the environmental process, concludes there are no impacts, yet tens of thousands of people then complain about the aircraft noise, and roundtables like ours are formed, and we continue to discuss the issue. So something's missing in this process. And based on the discussion that we had at the committee the last time, the idea was to take Mr. Hendricks' letter, receive input from the public, and we got several letters and emails regarding this particular topic, digest them, and then recast this position paper, if you will, based on that input and based on some of the concepts that were discussed at the time. Mr. Hendricks, and I don't mean to speak for him, but at that meeting wanted to try to keep this simple and straightforward and have a document that the legislative committee could approve and then be essentially a position paper for use at any point in time when the roundtable needs to respond to particular issues or questions or items. So that's the way in which this was prepared. As you can see from the document in the agenda, there's a problem statement. Why are we looking at this issue? A discussion of the fact that the noise analyses don't appear to be working in terms of identifying where the issues might be. It proposes a solution that in addition to noise metrics other than DNL and of course CNEL in California, use other tools, use other metrics. And then a portion of Mr. Hendricks' paper the last time was finding that balance, making sure that there's an equal weight given to the decision making of making the airspace more efficient and the impact of people on the ground due to noise. And then finally, it closes out with a series of recommendations about how to look at this issue, address this issue, with the idea that some or portions of all of this language could be pulled into future letters, discussions with members of Congress, and of course with the full roundtable to get their input and concurrence. One thing I do want to mention too is that the information input we received from our members of the public, as always, was phenomenal, very detailed and very thoughtful, and really dove down deep and had suggestions about metrics and way of looking at things. And I think this committee's intention was to sort of keep it up at the 36,000 foot level rather than being prescriptive to the FAA about what they should do, indicate to them, you have other tools available to you. You can go ahead and figure out how to use those. So that's the general concept behind this revision. Hopefully it meets the marks of what everyone was on the committee was looking for. And if it doesn't, I'm sure we'll hear about that and can do what we need to change it moving forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So we'll start with questions from the committee. So Mr. Hendricks.
Yeah, hello, hey, thanks. So first off, Steve, you can always speak for me. I'm pretty comfortable, although I thought we were trying to stay at 35,000, not 36,000 feet. You are in your just introduction right there, the first 60 seconds of what you said, where you kind of, gave the layman's description of the problem. I'm almost thinking that could be added as a preamble, because that just made it very simple and straightforward of what it was. I just thought you nailed it on what that was. I had something, as I've read this now a couple times, and thank you for rewording my words. One thing I thought that was missing, and you tell me, is where. We're talking about we want to be careful of noise to people on the ground and stuff like that. But do you think we need to identify that we mean more than just near the airport? The FAA already has kind of a around the airport that they think they need to be concerned about. But if we think of there's stuff coming over the San Mateo Hills, the Santa Cruz Mountains, Sunnyvale it's several miles away from San Jose. Should we put in kind of a where we think they need this extra stuff is? And I don't know a way to describe that. Is it below 10,000 feet, more than X miles away from the airport? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do, Glenn, and thank you. Yeah, I'm looking at page 4 of the agenda item, in the very last paragraph under the paragraph that's titled "Failure of FAA's existing aircraft noise analysis process." It says that the FAA has used the 65 DNL to rely on that as the exclusive impact threshold, and then it has a brief statement that says the 65 dBA DNL typically occurs within a few miles of an airport's runway. As a result, flight procedure changes that occur miles from an airport will never trigger an exceedance of the 65 DNL threshold. So I thought that was sort of where we're distinguishing what the issue is. It's not necessarily close in, at least for our constituents. It's further away from the airport and where flight procedure changes are being made. We could be more prescriptive than that if the committee feels as though we need to do that, but I'm open to suggestions.
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear what my colleagues have to say, but I think, you say here, this is a systemic flaw. but I think we need to somehow be able to identify, help zero them in a little bit. I mean, we've said the problem, but we didn't quite say anything about that. So, and then through the document, you refer to people versus, and maybe it was just me, but I wasn't able to see people on the ground anywhere, just as that kind of declaration we've made. And then the only other comment I just have is, you said this could be used to, respond to different things that might come with Congress and stuff. I would almost think once we've got this, we want to send it out to everybody in Congress, particularly, to our elected officials, but send it out to everybody. And then I'd be comfortable sending it out to them all again every 6 months, just to remind them that, this stuff has to happen. It has to be included in future legislation. But all in all, I thought you did a really good job. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. And if I might just respond to one comment that you made regarding people on the ground. I know that's a phrase that we've certainly used probably before our arrival at the roundtable or creation of the roundtable, and it's continued on. I think it's fine. However, I don't know where people are other than on the ground. I mean, that's where people live. That's where they reside. So to me, it's sort of a curious term in terms of people on the ground. And everything we do is.
If you think they're going to, not twist that into something else, then that's fine. But it kind of goes back to the where question a little bit. I want to make sure, this is really one, we need them to think better about noise and how it impacts people, and also the distance from the airport. So it's just, I'm a little bit concerned there's wiggle room where somebody with, could go ahead and try and drive a wedge in there to say, oh, well, they meant something else. But
got it.
You talk to them more than I do directly. So
okay.
Whatever you think, it's just, that's what a little bit my concern is, and making sure that, it's really, this is going to our congressional people as well. Get them to understand, get them to start saying people on the ground and, that kind of stuff. But all in all, I thought it was really good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn. Kathy, did you have any questions or comments?
Yes, thank you, Lisa. And I'm flipping back and forth here on my iPad so I can pull it up. Well, first of all, Pete Buttigieg, President-elect appointed Pete Buttigieg Transportation Secretary. Was it yesterday or the day before? Is that going to be his new title?
Yesterday, yes.
Yesterday.
Secretary of Transportation.
Secretary of Transportation. Yep, exactly. So yeah, I was excited about that. And, a young guy and, fresh ideas and, based on what's happened in the Trump administration, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with him. And hopefully a lot of people will come back. That left, like the FAA and, important places like that, we rely on to get information from and direction. So, but regarding the people on the ground that you were just talking about, do you include residents, buildings, people that work, campuses, business campuses, places where people work, and how they're impacted as well, as part of this noise measurement process, instead of just people on the ground, that people within, buildings, homes, etc. Do you include that in this assessment as well?
So the FAA's guidance for aircraft noise analyses all basically flows back to 14 CFR Code of Federal Regulations Part 150. And Part 150 has in it Table 1A, which defines the different types of land uses where noise impacts occur. And so depending on the type of land use, it is either considered compatible with aircraft noise, aircraft operations, or non-compatible. And you might imagine for people who live in homes that don't have particular sound insulation features, much like a office building might have or a hotel might have, they are lower on the scale, if you will, in terms of they fall out of that when the noise level passes 65. As you move up the scale and get higher, then you begin to pull into other types of uses. So office buildings, hotels, those types of things. But because they're of commercial construction, they can withstand much higher noise levels than folks that are living just at home. So it's accounted for in the FAA's regulations that they use for the National Environmental Policy Act, and it's tiered to account for the way in which their performance of their building envelopes work. Of course, other types of properties like parks and historic properties have different levels that are associated with them as well.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And funnily enough, I ended up in an airport commission meeting that Lisa and Glenn serve on, and heard a lot of this discussion for the first time there a couple of months ago, and found it really interesting. So let me ask you, Steve, in relation to that, like when San Jose, for instance, was expanding, and they came up with a plan to reach out to the homes like in the area, to install like white noise, in the homes. Homes that didn't have like air conditioning, double pane windows, insulated doors, things like that. That would be impacted by the increase in airport noise and takeoffs. Do you think like something like this would be instrumental or effective in, putting something in place like that? Again, a grant program for airports and residents to use to be able to say, this is the decibel level, and this is the impact that it's having on my community. And, to use a paper like this to be able to say, this is why we need a program to protect the residents and on the ground.
Yeah, and Kathy, it could potentially be used for that. Kind of going back to Glenn's earlier guidance of a few months ago, is to not muddy the waters too much. We could put a lot of things in here. I'm not sure how much the committee would want to have in here. The current issue with sound insulation is the 65 dB DNL, or in California CNL metric, is a standard. So if your home is outside of those contours, then in general you're not eligible for sound insulation treatment. If it is within there, then there is the potential for the home to be eligible, and there's other criteria. I believe, as this committee knows right now, the FAA is going through a process of deciding whether or not it needs to change that 65 standard to a different level based on national surveys that's been conducted. We've been waiting a couple years now to hear what those results are. It's thought that if that standard is lowered, say, and I'm just throwing a number out, to say something like 60 DNL, then the question becomes, would that allow more homes to qualify for insulation? The answer might be yes, it may be no, and the reason why it might be no is because you wouldn't be able to necessarily get the type of noise level reduction you need to qualify for a sound insulation program at that quieter level. So there's a direct relationship right now between the 65 DNL and sound insulation. There may be a new metric at some point in time, and then the question will be, what will the FAA's policy be about that? I'm not sure that sound insulation really fits into this position paper, but I'm open to hear what the committee thinks about it.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. I appreciate the input.
You bet.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else, Kathy?
Nope, that's all. Thank you, Lisa.
Okay, thanks. So I had a couple questions and we'll go over to Glenn. Yeah, Steve, I thought you did a terrific job. And Glenn, thanks for doing the first round of this. I do think it hit the right level of detail. I agree with your comment, Steve, about all the great input we got from the public. A lot of detail, which I think can be leveraged. But as a first piece, I kind of feel like this level of detail is good. So I appreciate the balance you struck there. I had a question about on page 5 of this item. It says there that the AEDT has a suite of supplemental metrics to help identify where problems may occur. And I was wondering if you had a perspective on those other supplemental metrics. Are any of them ones we want to particularly highlight to say we're interested in learning more about them and want to know if they, will help address this issue?
Sure, Kathy. Yes, there are multiple metrics that the ADT has. Some of them are the ability to generate maximum level sound levels from a single operation, sound exposure levels from a single operation, time above based on cumulative noise or multiple operations, number of events above a certain level. And the answer really becomes sort of like any job you might do around the house, what tool is right for that job and what metric is right for that. So depending on what you're trying to figure out, for example, an issue like speech interference, when we're doing analysis for is aircraft noise affecting classrooms, we'll look at the maximum level or the sound exposure level to see if it's exceeding the levels at which teachers speak within a classroom. So it really has to be pinpointed to what the issue is at hand. We did receive really good input from the members of the public about possible metrics. But again, I sort of stepped back from that and said, well, the FAA knows those metrics are available. We're highlighting it here to them. They should really be the ones that are deciding on which ones they need to use for a particular situation. The other is when an environmental document is being prepared, the local environmental protection specialist or EPS has the ability to recommend that supplemental metrics be used for a particular analysis. And that's where if the roundtable knew of a particular procedure that was being pursued or improvements at airports that were being pursued, it could potentially say to the FAA, for this project, we're really interested in seeing these 4 or 5 metrics be used or be studied. But I felt as though for this particular position paper, it's too general to try to list out a set of metrics and because the FAA knows what they are. It's their model. And so it's really up to them to choose them. But again, if the committee would like to see them in this paper, we could do that. And also if there's some future interest in having ESA do sort of a run through of what those metrics are and how they might be used, that might be a good application for a future legislative committee meeting.
Okay. So I'll just add, I agree with Glenn's earlier comment about, I think the sort of like the preamble that you said would be a good addition to this. And I am okay adding a little bit more detail about where. I feel like if you add a little bit more detail, it makes it a little bit more real for people and they can relate to it more. If you like name cities or regions or how far from the airport, just so that they really appreciate the issue here and how large it is, I guess I'd say. Did have another question, and that is on page 6, where on bullet point 3, I agree that you need to look at pre-change conditions and actual post-change conditions. I thought that was really good, but what concerned me was that it said to ensure that the after condition is the same or an improvement. And I think I don't want it to be the same. I want it to be an improvement. Because right now, I don't think the current situation is one that is satisfactory to folks. And so any changes have to absolutely be an improvement. I don't know how others feel about that, but I'd be interested in hearing that.
If I
comments, yeah,
if I might respond to that, Kathy, it could use another word or two there. The concept was the condition is the same as predicted by their modeling, so that we're, and the issue we've run into and we've heard from our community members is that the FAA goes through this process, makes a finding of no significance, or when it's a Cat X, determines there's nothing is going to change. And it does, and there's no going back. Glenn mentioned this at the last meeting. There's no sort of checking did things turn out the way that you predicted that they would or you thought they would? So when I've written here, the condition is the same, it means the same as the modeling that they did or the prediction that they did, as opposed to sort of what you're stuck with after that occurs. So I think there could be some additional clarity there.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that. And then I do have a couple other comments, but I think I'd like to hear from the public before I do the rest of mine. Glenn, did you have?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to what Kathy was saying about, the sound mitigation and stuff like that. And I don't think that's really what we want to try and get into right here. First off, is the way sound mitigation has been done is the whole industry is focused around, that's a very narrow set of areas around the airport. And the second thing is it doesn't do anything to address the outside noise, which is what we hear in our backyards and schools and stuff like that. So I think, maybe mitigation tools are something that, could be pulled out later, but where we're trying to set our position and what we want it to be, I think I'd prefer to stay away from the sound mitigation just because it's a predefined kind of program and what people have already thought about. And again, it just doesn't take care of outside. That's all.
Thanks. Actually, I think I do have one more comment before we go to the public. And that is on page 5. I really like the points you made in terms of the solution, but one that I think I would like to consider adding is another one, which is a focus on making sure that there is community input and involvement prior to any flight paths being changed. So I think, we've said that a lot and it's kind of touched on in other areas, but I want that one to really stand out because I think it's really important that they hear that we want involvement before any flight paths are changed. And that one, I think there could be a lot to it, and I don't want to go into tons of detail, but, things like making the information readily available and not make it difficult and have people have to ask for it, and really define the process that will be used to make flight path changes and where the public plays a role in that. I don't know how others feel about that, but maybe we'll circle back to everybody after we hear from the public. Any other comments before I open it up for public comment? Okay, so I'll open it up for public comment. If you'd like to address the committee, please raise your blue hand. I don't see anybody on the phone, but we will provide 3 minutes apiece. And we'll start with Jennifer Landesman. If you could unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. I'm going to go to the 35,000 foot level as well. And I don't know if you've heard, but the administrator has said that all of this process is a shared responsibility. And, you know, about issues of protecting residents, but I think there's also about residents protecting themselves. And I would say that a shared responsibility would have to include shared information and informed decisions, which is what the environmental process is supposed to be about. And just like you share responsibility in making sure that, you know, people are informed, I think you should share responsibility for people not being informed. And I would disagree very much with the fact that the FAA is the one that needs to come to us to ask for supplemental metrics and projects, because I have heard this repeatedly from the FAA and the chief scientist stating that it's in the law, in their 1051F, that they provide for projects to use supplemental metrics, but they're not going to come running to us to say this, because in their most recent report, they very clearly say, look, it's not a one size fits all. So therefore, we can't just dictate a metric. And if you're waiting for us to do that, I don't think they're going to do that. They have studied all the possible metrics. I've shared a document with you, which came about with various grassroots groups. I would say people who are very involved on the metrics issue that came together and put a recommendation forward on which supplemental metrics to use. Supplemental because it is fundamental for the FAA, and they are required to provide noise maps all the way to 45 DNL. That is what you read in a FONSI. They say, you know, nothing happened all the way over here, but all the way to 45, there was a benefit or whatever. So I think you really have to be more informed about what the FAA already publishes and is required to do. They're just not showing those maps. Then you have to really drill on how we get supplemental metrics on the GBAS project. And I will send the recommendation that was motivated by the fact that a lot of people are just saying, oh, you know, who's going to give us the metrics and, you know, and so forth. And so we made recommendations based on using the FAA's own information. I have asked the people who work on this, and they can produce any kind of data set, any of the supplemental metrics, and these happen with literally a push of a button. I will call it that, but no time, no, you know, fiscal impact or anything. So I think you really, again, have to distinguish between what you can do for people now and what you're planning to do for the future, which, by the way, all of those projects are underway to be changing anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Robert Holbrook, you could unmute yourself.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'd like to address the where question that Mr. Hendricks focused on, and also the question of sound insulation that Ms. Watanabe and Mr. Alverson discussed. It's become clear to me that while our focus on metrics is important, improving metrics alone won't provide any relief to those of us who live more than a few miles from the airport. Yesterday's presentation to the technical working group on NEPA standards made this crystal clear. I didn't really identify the critical issue until a few months ago. We all know that standards of significance used to make policy decisions don't correlate with the complaints from NextGen. Well, what we haven't explicitly acknowledged is that the FAA makes a broad range of policy decisions involving airplane noise and emissions. And here's the catch. The standard of significance used to determine whether a homeowner near an airport qualifies for replacement windows and insulation cannot be effective if that same standard is used to determine whether it's okay to shift 300 airplanes a day from a neighborhood 30 miles from the airport to another neighborhood nearby. To say nothing of regulations we might like to see regarding noise shocks like sonic booms and the deployment of speed brakes. Different standards of significance are required, and 10 million noise complaints for SFO since NextGen shows this to be true. So here's my suggestion. I believe we should ask the FAA to identify different classes of policies regarding airplane noise and emissions and ask them to come up with standards that are meaningful to each policy class. The issue is not so much about getting the 65 DNL standard right, so much as the need to define multiple standards of significance for multiple situations. For today, I'd suggest one of two approaches. Either finish this deliverable, more or less as it is, but resolve to follow up with another deliverable calling for separate standards of significance for distinct operational policies, or roll that advice into this deliverable. Either approach would work, but I think it's important that we do one of these things. Thank you.
Thank you. Darlene Yapley.
Lisa and the committee, thank you for hosting the meeting before the end of the year. And Steve, thank you for your excellent synthesis. My first comment is building on Robert's comment. I would like to see in the recommendations a sharper or more explicit recommendation to change the definition and standard for significant impact. I think that there's words like collect and analyze and use, but I don't think we've explicitly said change the definition of the 65 DNL. And I think Robert's comment about different classes is good. If the FAA did next gen today and presented it to us, we could not do anything because they would have a finding of no significant impact because what we're experiencing does not hit the 65 DNL. That's why it's critical for us to make that recommendation. The second thing is, Glenn, I think your comment about on the ground is spot on because the FAA measures things, but it doesn't actually measure what we're experiencing. So it doesn't measure speed breaks, flaps, the configuration of the planes, all these negative experiences all the way to the airport is not captured in what they do. And that's why we're saying our experience on the ground, not the FAA's tools that they use to estimate our experience. My several comments also is first, we should include and address the current definition of cumulative impact. So it captures vectored and non-vectored traffic from all procedures at all airports. Today, cumulative impact is defined as one procedure at one airport. And unfortunately, cities like Palo Alto and Mountain View get vectored and non-vectored traffic from multiple procedures and multiple airports. Surfer, Pirate, Bodega West, San Jose South Flow. We need aggregate impact. Number two, we need to require impact assessment all the way to final approach. This is what we experience on the ground. Today, the FAA calculates their end of the procedure, and that's not reality. Surfer ends in Los Altos, Bodega ends over San Francisco and then flies around Palo Alto. Pirate ends all the way at Woodside. San Jose South Flow ends at Sunnyvale, but 50% of the planes go to Palo Alto. My third point is please require the FAA to document the specific safety or efficiency issues behind a proposal and state the expected benefits. We keep seeing that safety and efficiency is the reason for making the changes with no specifics. The FAA does not quantify the improvements and what efficiency improvements were made at the expense of high negative impacts to communities. My last point, and I'm gonna push back given my experience, is the FAA issued a metrics report. Yes, they know all the metrics. The problem that we have is they don't use any metrics except the 65 DNL and their standards. So we need to put some meat into our recommendations, which is what if the FAA does not use these other measurements that truly show our experience of impacts. Thank you.
Thank you, Darlene. Next, Marie Jo.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Steve, for a very good document. I have 3 comments. Number one, the term supplemental metrics in the document or even mentioned in some comments needs to be reviewed carefully. It is an FAA term. They distinguish between supplemental and alternative metrics. Supplemental metrics for the FAA are used to help the public understand community noise impact, but not for decision-making in environmental reviews. In contrast, alternative metrics are metrics that can improve the prediction of impact. I'll email you the FAA references. So we want both. We want supplemental to understand noise effects, and we want alternative to reflect impacts more accurately and to determine what is significant. Number 2, in the solutions section, it mentioned non-noise metrics. I think it would be simpler to refer to non-DNL metrics or just multiple metrics, because other metrics like and above, for instance, they're related to noise. They count the number of planes above a noise level. And for instance, ADT just has a list of metrics and they don't categorize them, noise, non-noise, etc. And one clarification that I would like to ask in the document, I could not understand what you meant by data on a per person basis. The term is sensitive because the FAA argument is that fewer people are now impacted because of next gen. Maybe you meant over community instead of a per person basis, I don't know. And my third and very important comment is that we must, as other speakers just said, we must have one recommendation on changing the current definition and standard of significant impact. DNL 65 is the standard. It's a problem. None of our communities will ever meet that level, yet we are deeply impacted. So this recommendation is critical, and it must have 3 things. Number 1, other alternative metrics, not just DNL, should be allowed in defining significant impact. Number 2, the thresholds for significant impact must be established for these metrics that define significant impact. And you can maybe lower the DNL, but that's not really the point. And number 3, aggregate impact. Aggregate means the cumulative impact that Darlene talked about, but it's also the combined impact of changes over time. And let me give you an example. Today, the FAA reset the noise baseline after every change, with Surfer first, then SGC South Flow, then Parrot. And the combined impact of the 3 changes would have triggered a 5 dB increase over Palo Alto. That would have been significant in current rules. However, each incremental change may not. We're like frogs in the boiling water. And final comment, the FAA should not be the one to decide how to define significant impact. They have a conflict of interest and their track record is not good. We need independent, objective experts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary-Jo. Next is Jennifer from Sunnyvale.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, as many of the speakers have already mentioned, the current noise metrics used by the FAA are ineffective. They don't deal with communities away from the airport. And we know the noise metrics must be redefined to represent what's happening on the ground. Here's the problem. The FAA does not care about noise. FAA's mission is to provide the safest, most efficient airspace system in the world. Notice that in that mission, the word noise is not mentioned. Yet we are asking the FAA in this document, now the document is pretty good, but we are asking the FAA to determine those metrics and then to marshal those metrics and follow those metrics. Their track record is poor, and there's no reason for us to think that any different come up. It would be equivalent to hiring a bank robber to guard a bank. Basically, what you'd end up with is you might get a good result from that bank robber, but more likely you're just going to have a bank that's been robbed. We are asking for help from the FAA, and maybe we're going in the wrong direction. The FAA should not be involved in determining new metrics. Otherwise, we might be here in 10 years shaking our heads because nothing has changed and we can't figure out what went wrong. First, I think we need some sort of an independent entity. I don't know how that would be formed, but independent of the FAA to define new metrics, as many of the speakers have mentioned here, that are significant and effective and represent what's happening on the ground. Independent, and independent of the government to a certain extent as well, because you have the aviation lobby that's very powerful as well. There has to be a common goal regarding noise and metrics, and they need to be done independently. We can kind of go parallel. In other words, we can hone in on this document, but I also one of the main things we need is an independent, or the ask for an independent set of experts who work with residents' input and come up with effective metrics that will cover the whole spectrum, away from the airport, near airports, that are effective. Again, we need to go to effective metrics and not the FAA, and not ask the bank robber to guard the bank. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Is there any other member of the public who wishes to provide comments at this point? I don't see any more blue hands, so I'll close public input and bring it back to the committee. And Glenn Hendricks.
Madam Chair.
Oh, yes.
May I just, one thing that one of the members of the public mentioned, just, and I think it's a misinterpretation of what I said, or maybe I wasn't clear, and that is Jennifer Landiswin mentioned about needing to have the FAA ask, for example, the roundtable about what metrics you'd want to use for analysis. And let me be clear, the environmental protection specialist is the one person at the FAA for a particular environmental document who gets to determine what metrics are used. Under normal circumstances, they will not come to the community and ask, what do you want? It's really up to the community to go to that environmental protection specialist and tell them what you want to be included in the document. So I want to make sure that that process is clear, and that, and I think that's why in most cases, you don't have supplemental metrics and documents, because the ask has never been made. The community has never gone forward to the EPS and asked for those documents. Or in most cases, the airport sponsor hasn't done that when it's an airport project. So I just want to make sure that that point is clear.
Thanks, Steve. Glenn.
Yeah, so first off, based on some of our public's comments and stuff, I think we should write a separate letter to President-elect Biden and nominate me to be the new air noise czar with complete and total authority. I think that would take care of it. A little more serious. So Lisa, you were talking about maybe adding something about process and of how community input and stuff is. And as much as I think that's a great idea, that's only one. It's almost like we need a letter or a write-up like we've done like this, but on process, because there's more. So I mean, I'd be okay if we wanted to add one segment about that, but just with the realization that there's a whole other, process set of issues and stuff. And so like I said, I wouldn't mind if you want to put something in, but we should add it onto our potential list of maybe we need to go through and have a similar thing as it relates to the overall process, because I think we can all talk about lots of different issues and ways to expand this input piece that you were talking about. Second thing is, one of the members of the public said, here we could either complete this deliverable of what it's trying to do, or we could expand it into a bunch of other stuff. And my recommendation would be to address and get this deliverable done with the set of objectives and things that we had. There were lots of good comments that, some of the speakers had about this stuff, but it's really, expanding kind of the scope of what we're talking about and changing the way I see this used. And I don't see this as the end all, answer to everything we need to do. Is if we say we've got this done, let's get it to Congress, let's get it to the FAA, let's hear what some feedback is and why, they're having a problem with it. Go back and talk to Congress and say, don't worry about those things and do it anyway. That's where I just think, narrow and focused. It's been a topic that comes up a lot. And my recommendation would be, let's deal with this as we've kind of got it. And if we want to have something else, then we could go ahead and produce something else that, we understand how all those different vectors would fit into the objective we're trying to write. Thank you.
Thanks. Kathy, did you have any comments?
Nope. I've enjoyed listening to all the public input, that's for sure.
Okay.
Yep.
So I do want to add a few things. I agree with Glenn. his comments about let's focus on what we have and get it done and start using it. Because I would like to accomplish something here. And I think it's a great start. And while there are other things we want to address, let's not wait till we have them all done before we start addressing some of them. So I would like to finish what we have here. I appreciate the public comment, especially about, saying we really want to define a new metric. Some things that I feel like they emphasized as I was reading this, and I read this several times, I wanted some things to just jump out at me the first time I read it. And so, changing that metric I think should really jump out. That DNL is not good and we need something different. And then Glenn's point about where we're measuring this and on the ground, I think that needs to jump out too. So I don't think I would necessarily change a lot of what's in here. I just want it to stand out a little bit more. And I think that can be done either by, tweaking the words a little bit or, bolding, underlining, italics, something, bullet points, just so that you really get it without having to read it more than once. And let's see. I think that's it. I also,
Lisa, if I can just say, I agree with what you're saying. And also, if we could also do, that if Steve could go back to that first 45 seconds of where we added as a preamble, because it really puts it into, straightforward layman's terms that I think, as Congress and stuff, hopefully they're going to read the first paragraph or two. I think that would help put it into context for them to be able to go here, legislative, oh wait, these are what my constituents are, trying to address.
Yep, I agree. So I don't have any other input on this. Is this something, Steve, let's see, I know your role is changing a little bit, but is this something you or Chris, there he is, could take and do another round of?
Yes, Madam Chair, we definitely could do that. What I would suggest in sort of the form of a motion that the committee recommend that ESA take another cut at making the changes that were described by the committee members, that we work with you as chair to review those changes, and then ultimately have your approval as to it reflects what the committee has described. And obviously with some of the points that you've made in terms of highlighting particular issues, bolding or using bullet points, it would be great to have your input on that as well.
And then would a motion also include the next step being, we wouldn't bring it back to the Ledge Committee, we would take it to the roundtable for review and input if they have any. And then should we include in here like next steps with this? Glenn, looks like you're going to say something.
Yeah, if I may, I was going to, try and make a motion similar to what Steve was saying. Is if you're ready, I'll make a motion that you guys can, friendly amend if you want. That we go ahead and ESA take the input they received from our discussion today, make the appropriate updates with any final review to be done with the chair, Chair Matichak, with the intent of producing a document that can be brought to the next roundtable, with then the roundtable, authorize the authority, approve the document and the authority to start getting it sent out and used with all the appropriate agencies.
I'm happy to second. Sounds inclusive.
Thanks. So we have a motion by Committee Member Hendricks, a second by Committee Member Watanabe. And let's see, we'll do a roll call vote unless anybody has any further comments on that. I'm good with the motion. Committee Member Hendricks.
Yes, and I just want to thank my colleagues, ESA, and the members of the public for caring about the document we're trying to put together.
Committee Member Watanabe.
Aye.
And I also vote aye. Awesome, so that passes unanimously. And yeah, I'd also like to do my thanks. I thought we worked really well together on this. I appreciate everyone's input. I appreciate the public input. I especially appreciate, as I said before, a lot of the detail that came with the public input, that if we have conversations with our congressional representatives, that we have more detail that we can provide. But this is a good higher level piece to get the conversation going. So thanks, everyone.
And Madam Chair, Member Hendricks mentioned sort of defining what the next steps would be at the full roundtable. And I think in your presentation of this document at the full roundtable, you could lay that out either verbally or have maybe a short cover memo that talks about the way in which you'd want this document to be used.
Okay.
I see a thumbs up from Member Hendricks.
Okay, thank you. Sounds good to me too. Kathy?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Then we will close this item and we will move on to item 5, which is public health and environmental impact of noise and emissions. And we'll ask Committee Member Watanabe to take the lead on this discussion since she prepared the next rev.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair Matichek. And thank you for the opportunity to do a second draft of this paper. I appreciate the input that was received from members of the public, and I have to chime in as well and just talk and reiterate what a phenomenal and detailed memorandums and emails that were submitted, from the public. And I have to say that they were very useful in redoing this document. And hopefully I've been able to incorporate items that are more of what this particular issue that people were looking for to use in the work plan. So I don't know what more to say, except that there was one item that came up, and I thought that it was a very good suggestion. And actually, Jennifer from Sunnyvale, while she was talking earlier, reminded me about this particular a community group or that could possibly be used to work with the FAA. And that's something it was actually brought up by Robert Holbrook in the memorandum that he submitted. And it's called the Center for Excellence for Public Health and Welfare. And when Jennifer from Sunnyvale talked about having another group that could be separate from the FAA that could work on community engagement and collect information to establish, well, in this case, she was talking about effective metrics, but at the same time, the way that Mr. Holbrook submitted the recommendation was that the Center for Excellence would collaborate on an annual basis on the progress of the FAA toward relieving and protecting public health and welfare from airport noise and sonic boom, to help ensure that the FAA understands the continuing interest of Congress in the FAA's execution of this duty. So so I thought that an organization like that maybe would be what Jennifer from Sunnyvale was talking about. So anyway, I'm just going to submit, I'm happy to take your comments. I just want to say that thank you to Darlene Yapley for the memorandum that she prepared, and includes a lot of the bills that have been introduced by Congress regarding airport noise, and of course Robert Holbrook, and finally Jennifer Landesman. Again, the memorandums and information that you prepare are really, they are phenomenal and very detailed, and very, very helpful. So that's all I'm going to say, and I'm happy to take your comments or thoughts.
Great, thank you. So we'll have the committee ask questions or provide some comments, initial comments, and then we'll open it up for public input. Mr. Hendricks?
Yeah, I'm just going to go right to the recommendations piece, and just a couple thoughts on some of the bullets. So the first bullet says here, looking at legislation for local, state, and federal. I thought we were really just looking at federal legislation. I don't really know what our local or state regulations are impacting the big FAA issues that we have. On bullet number 2, that's great if somebody's going to go ahead and pay for airport noise monitors. I do not think the roundtable should be involved in getting them. That seems to me a better job for our city managers to go ahead and deal with. There's a separate issue that's going on about how many hours of resources we have. And if the roundtable's got to try and coordinate with the different cities to try and do something, that I could see that it would just suck up all of our budgeted hours of anybody's time to go ahead and do stuff. So I don't think the other than saying to a city manager of a particular city, here's a program you could try and go execute on. City managers are much better at being able to try and get something like that implemented in their own city. And then maybe the last bullet here, it says, this could be further driven home should a subcommittee. I think if that's what we say, we should recommend that the Quiet Skies Caucus have the Center of Excellence subcommittee. It's either let's tell them to do it, or we shouldn't address it. I mean, saying that if they should decide, that's just, I don't think that's really making anything. So I'd rather just change that to a definitive statement that says, and make it as a specific recommendation for them to go do something. And those are all my thoughts.
No, good thoughts. I appreciate it. Yeah, let me see. Regarding the first bullet point, I can understand why you would want to just recommend that proposed legislation would be done at the federal level, because it is more so at the federal level that issues like that are addressed. So I'm happy to remove local and state. And regarding the airport monitors, the reason I put that in there, and I agree, it's usually the city managers that work on those issues. I know Deanna has done it for us, and probably for you in Sunnyvale. But at the same time, the reason I left as the roundtable is because we as representatives of the round table have that knowledge and to be able to work with the city manager. So I don't know, maybe it could be written another way that individual members of the SCSC could be instrumental in securing or assisting to secure permanent monitors for our communities. It could be reworded, but I think that we as representatives do have knowledge that would be helpful in the city to city managers in obtaining noise monitors.
If I can just address this, I mean, here in the city of Sunnyvale, we just put in air noise monitors, and the city council and myself, other than voting to say, yeah, we'll pay for what we agree with spending the money, we spent 0 time in it. And as a matter of fact, they didn't want to hear what I had to say about where they should go and all that kind of stuff like that. Let the experts actually figure out the right thing to go ahead and do. But the thing I'm mostly worried about is that we would try and use any amount of our limited budget for the Santa Clara, Santa Cruz Roundtable on anything about this. This is not the right, there's going to be a whole other discussion that we're still trying to figure out our overall governance and everything else. And us spending any of our time to go ahead and do that, I think, is the wrong direction for the roundtable to go.
Okay, I understand your concern with the budget, because we do have an issue to be concerned about there. But I will say that when we recently installed new monitors in Santa Clara, for instance, it was because of my working in the community and finding out where the issues were and addressing it with the staff, that they took my recommendation actually and put a monitor where I asked them to put it. But I'm sure they brought out the experts as well before they did it. But at the same time, they listened to me. So that's why I felt that we as roundtable representatives could have an impact. It's not to take away from the roundtable, but we as individuals, based on our representation on the roundtable, then take that communication then to our city manager and recommendations and knowledge. So I mean, if there's a way to reword it that would make it better, then I'm happy to do that. But I really I feel like we as individuals do offer a benefit to our city managers based on the work that we're doing on this roundtable.
If you can reword it, that's fine, but I don't think the city manager in Cupertino or Mountain View or Los Altos is going to care what I think. My city manager, I hope, cares, but I don't think those other ones are going to, so what you're really talking about is a engaged, active council member in a particular city that wants to go ahead and do something.
Right.
But if you can reword it somehow, and right now we don't even have council members from all the cities in the county.
You're absolutely right. I understand that. But at the same time, I feel like Lisa Matichek, for instance, I mean, and you, Glenn, you both, bring so much to the table, but you still, you offer so much to your community and to your city managers based on all the work that you've done and the roundtable and over the years learning all of it. So that's why I felt like this.
If you want to reword it some way, that's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Thank you. And then for the last bullet that you mentioned about the Quiet Skies Caucus and a subcommittee. I think that's an excellent idea of definitively stating, a group like Center of Excellence subcommittee would be appropriate for taking on that work to follow up with, to work with Quiet Skies and the administrator to discuss the report. So I think that's a very good suggestion.
Thanks. Looks like no more comments, Glenn? Okay. So a couple of comments at this point. I thought this, was great evolution of this. So thanks, Kathy, for doing this. I felt like there was some overlap with the other topic in here. And so I was looking for this to focus more on the health and environmental impacts of airplane noise. And so there's some things in here that are very similar to what's in the other paper. And again, I guess my comment about the other topic, when I said I wanted to jump out at people that there are health issues associated with airplane noise and environmental issues associated with airplane noise. So yes, it's coming from the airplanes and the airplane noise, but the real topic here is there's an impact on health of people. People on the ground. So I felt like I wanted that to jump out more. throughout this and kind of, I wouldn't say downplay, but just have as the cause, basically the airplanes. I appreciated all the input that we got from the public, as well as that you cited last time, Kathy, about the studies that are going on. And there's a little of that in here, but for me, I felt like I wanted a little bit more. And I think it's I was thinking, I was wanting that to really show sort of the magnitude of the issue and the fact that a lot of different groups are looking at this. It's not something that should be taken lightly. And indeed, a lot of people are looking at it. And so I thought it might be helpful to have a little bit more of that in there so that the issue really grabs you to say, wow, this is a huge problem. And then the recommendations, I do see this one as being different in a way than the previous topic on noise, because you know, there are some things that are in the works, and there's other things that can be done. I appreciated all of the comments that we got from the public about specific bills that we should follow up on. And, you know, now might be the time, now that we're past the election. But we still have a lot of COVID related stuff that we're working on. So maybe it isn't the right time. But, you know, to list those out, I thought might be helpful. The ones we really want to focus on, and the studies that we really want the results of, that would potentially drive other bills that might be introduced. So I guess I was just looking for a little bit more in that area.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But you know, that's just my opinion. I don't know if you and Glenn feel the same way.
I respect your opinion, Lisa. But I again, you know, I know when I initially put it together, I was using you know, Glenn's as a model, and I mean, I understand wanting to list out the bills and studies that we want to get results from. I mean, I didn't know how big we wanted this document to be. So if you want to add, if you know, as the chair and what you foresee as this looking like, I'm happy to go back and pull out. I mean, it was invaluable information again that Darlene and Robert, you know, included in their memorandums that I think would be very appropriate to add to this, along to this, as long as, you know, that's what you would like to see, and to be able to expand on, you know, what's already been done.
So I don't want to make this incredibly long. I think the length of the noise metrics paper is about right. And so I think this could be a little bit longer, but I wouldn't add, you know, 5 more pages. I think, you know, three pages is pretty good.
Okay.
I think it's the amount that people can digest.
I agree. You don't want to lose people. So
yeah.
I right. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay.
Okay. Any other comments on this one before I open up to the public? Okay. So we'll open it up to the public now. So if you all would raise your blue hands, and we'll have 3 minutes apiece. And we will start with, whoops, I just lost my list. Marie-Jo, if you would unmute yourself.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. So thank you, Kathy, for taking the time to review the community input and advancing the document. It's a difficult topic. It's not as mature as noise metrics and measurement, and that's why it needs attention. So after reading the document, it seemed that there were 2 major issues that you listed. One was the health impacts of noise and emissions, and that includes the ultrafine particulates. And the second one is the consideration and disclosure of community impacts in the FAA environmental review process. So my suggestion is it might help to treat each topic separately
and also use the same document structure as in the noise metric document that went from problem statement to recommendations. In terms of specific current recommendation, I have a couple of suggestions. The one about continue to monitor and advocate proposed legislation, yes, this needs to appear, but under each topic and really be tailored to each topic, because when you're talking about legislation for airports to put curfews, that's very different than a legislation to identify what impact information would be shared with communities and when. And so I think the need to tailor the legislation recommendation to the topic is important because it's based on what's needed, what's desired, and what really exists today, either with existing proposed legislation or crafting new legislation. And as you probably guess, crafting or amending the right bills, including identifying some recourse when the deliverables of these bills are not met, this is not easy. So seeking help, thinking through this with ESA's help and congressional staff help is also important. And the other suggestion I have is on the collect the noise measurements at home using new metrics. Yeah, that should be covered under the noise metric documents to go back to, you know, narrowing your charter here. So my overall suggestion in summary are: one, to cover the health impact separately from the FAER process, the environmental review process. And then for each of these two topics, then follow a document structure that's similar to the noise metrics and identify some specific legislation that's really worth considering. And by the way, the TWG, the technical working group, started to work on the EFA environmental review process. There was a meeting yesterday, and so in the future, they may have a technical summary that could then be leveraged by this legislative committee. So just FYI. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Holbrook.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy, for preparing this document and for considering our input. I was happy to see the suggestion for the Center of Excellence for Public Health and Welfare. If this is carried forward and Congress does show interest in going down this path, I think we'd have some more specific guidance for them about which organizations we'd like to see the COE work with. Maybe I should say suggestions rather than guidance, like the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, but that's for the future. The one statement that I take issue with that is in the document is the sentence, the SCSC Roundtable agrees that safety of air travel is paramount. I respectfully suggest that this is too strong. It means that residents would have to shoulder the most burdensome of increases in noise for even the most trivial improvements to safety. Just as airplane manufacturers are expected to make trade-offs when designing an airplane that ultimately meet an acceptable but very high level of safety, so the FAA should be asked to operate within procedures that provide an acceptable but very high level of safety. Unfortunately for PBN, current law makes the test absolute. And unwinding this is going to require rolling back an amendment that was successfully attached to the 2018 FAA reauthorization bill that was originally introduced by the what's now the White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows. I believe that our roundtable should give itself the flexibility to question this policy and perhaps advocate for a softer version of it. So I'd ask that the sentence that I quoted be softened so that the test is not absolute. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Landesman. Not. Can you unmute yourself, Jennifer?
I'm so sorry. I was speaking and I didn't know I had not unmuted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy, for this. This is the first time that I have seen such a detailed document come from a roundtable with ideas and discussion on this whole big topic. I'm going to put a plug here for February 23rd to the 26th, which is the UC Davis Aviation Noise and Emissions Symposium, where we're going to have a session on health, and we're going to have a session on metrics. And as the chair mentioned, there's just a lot of overlap with that. I wanted to read this one data point from a study that has just come out on nighttime noise, which says the risk of cardiovascular death increases by 33% for nighttime noise levels between 40 and 50 decibels LEQ, and 44% for levels above 55 decibels. So, you know, that's why metrics matters, right? And we're going to have a speaker, I'm hoping, and I'm kind of probably divulging more information now than I should because everything is still being planned at the symposium. But to, you know, see how other countries approach this topic of metrics and health. And there were so many good ideas, you know, in the other section about metrics. How do others do this? And so people have a lot of different models. So I just thought that maybe, I don't know when this is supposed to be published, but if you might want to use some of that information going forward, you know, if I don't know when this is going to be published, but you're going to have a lot more information at that time. But I want to urge again that for current projects, thank you, Steve, for pointing out how one should go about asking for supplemental metrics, because, you know, wouldn't people want to know if your statistics can change radically with a project and have some metrics and supplemental metrics, for example, to understand what your risks are? Let's say if you're going to have many more events at night from a new procedure and so forth. I just feel that while the slower wheels are churning to do a very big change in national policy, that for the current projects, we would, you know, it's really literally just ask, please ask, who is the environmental protection specialist for the GBAS project, and propose some metrics. And that's why we have put forward that document. And I would encourage, you know, to have a meeting to see what you could ask for. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Darlene Yapley.
Thank you very much, Kathy, for reading our documents. I just want to say that Marie Jo was my collaborator in the document that was submitted. I wanted to build on a few comments that Marie Jo said, which is what really stood out for me were the two topics, the health impacts and the FAA environmental review. And again, moving some of those noise items to the other document, I think would simplify the focus. And I think Glenn and Lisa both mentioned the community engagement is a topic that would go under the FAA environmental review. So I think that fits nicely. I think the two topics have their own unique problems, failure in the current process, solutions and recommendations. So again, it's helpful to look at them separately. For the Center of Excellence recommendation, there's several items. And I was stepping back to think about what are the challenges we are really having with the FAA. And right now, I'm not sure the issue is having a center or not having a center. There's a center that exists under Jim Heilman that has noise and emissions under it. And he might be someone that we have as a speaker so we can understand his remit better. But getting reports doesn't seem to be the problem either, because they produce an annual report, as well as we've seen several reports already in as a result of the 2018 FAA reauthorization bill. I think the issue that we've got to address is that the reports are insufficient and don't have positive impacts for the community. The alternative metrics report that the center did not evaluate alternative metrics. And that was the letter in the last packet that was sent out by ESA, that 29 House members, Eshu, Khanna, Panetta, and Spear, wrote a letter about their disappointment in the report that was part of the bill and asked the FAA to revisit it. They also did a report on community involvement, and there was no result in communities being involved earlier or having information that reflects the impacts. So again, what they concluded was more training and maybe allowing local government people to determine the number of meetings for the community. But again, it doesn't affect the key problems. So the problem we seem to have stepping aside from centers is that when the FAA is given a remit to do something, they are focused on the industry needs, not the community needs. And I think we need to address how can we get the FAA to be a good actor, and not just create another center, but figure out how to set up legislation that actually will deliver that. And that includes relying on independent expert groups that you could fund the FAA, who will then fund, for example, the National Academies of Sciences for health studies. So in summary, I think we should consider asking Steve to take the current document that you have, put it in the format of the noise document, and take the input from the packet and submit that to be reviewed at the next meeting. Thank you again.
Thank you, Darlene. Jennifer from Sunnyvale. Can you
sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Kathy, this was a great first draft, but I had a little bit of trouble figuring out the goal paper. So if I was to describe the goal in 20 seconds, I don't think I could do that. For example, in our prior discussion, the noise paper had a clear goal. It's basically to push for new effective noise metrics. I would like to see what sort of goal there is for this particular paper so we can kind of stay on track on this and stay focused. But again, it is a good first draft. As Lisa had mentioned, I would keep it isolated to health and environmental impacts and not overlap the two reports so much. And I know that it's difficult. This is a difficult paper to write. And I would also include some of the history, as Jennifer Landis mentioned regarding the, for example, the study on noise, night noise, and the impact to health and mortality. Things that are good to put in this paper as kind of the problem statement. Marie Jo mentioned, you want to have the problem, 2 recommendations. And again, this is difficult because I don't know again where this paper is going. It was very confusing because I didn't know where this paper would begin and the other one would end regarding the noise paper. The other thing I wanted to mention, and again, I don't know where this paper is going, but we might want to link somehow with the EPA or make a recommendation on how we might be able to link or make recommendations on some independent study that links to the EPA. I don't know if that would be effective or not, but I thought I'd throw that out there for you. And the other thing is, again, I don't know if we want to initiate a study through this or push forward on certain legislation and get into some of the specifics on legislation that may be already sitting out there that we want to push forward. But again, this needs to remain focused with a goal. So I just kind of wanted to comment on that. Again, this is a difficult paper to write, I understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any other folks from the public want to provide comments on this topic? I don't see any more blue hands. Okay, so we'll close public comment and bring it back to the committee.
Okay.
Further comments, Glenn.
Yeah, so cool. So, I never want to disagree with speakers of the public, but I'm sorry, Robert, I'm going to slightly disagree with you on this one. Where your comment about the statement that safety of air travel is paramount, and I actually agree with that. I think you didn't read the whole rest of the thing that talked about process should be amended to ensure that the impact of aircraft noise on people and noise sensitive resources is given the same decision-making weight as the efficient use of the airspace for aircraft operators. That's right. I think that's the sentiment of what we're trying to get to is there needs to be a change in what they do. But I don't know about you, but me personally, I want air travel safe. They just put 737 Maxes back in the sky, and that took 2 years. So, I think they did focus on safety, and I'm okay with that. Some of the other comments that people had, a little bit of it is, I'm hoping that Congress is going to be able to act differently in the next 4 years than it has the last 4 years. And that, some of the things that were mentioned is Congress needs to get on board and be doing a little bit more follow-up to the direction they're giving to the FAA or whatever federal agency that it is that they're giving direction to. And I'm kind of hoping some of these things that maybe the congressional offices are going to be able to do a little bit more if they give clear direction to the FAA, for example. And then if the FAA is not doing it, then the Congress has the ability to follow up and go, time out, guys, here. This is really not the direction of what we wanted. So some of the comments that people are making about what we could or couldn't do or suggest or not, I think we need to understand a little bit more about what's going to happen with Congress and how it's going to be able to go back to, I hesitate to use the word, but a little bit more of their normal type operation for how they normally do things. And those are all my thoughts.
Thanks. Kathy.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I agree with what you just said, Glenn. Number one, about this, the sentence that Mr. Holbrook had a concern about, that about the SEC agrees and about the about the roundtable being flexible. I actually took that statement from one of our roundtable documents. So and I can't put my finger on it right now, but I know I took that statement from a roundtable document. So anyway, the other thing I agree about, yeah, Congress and FAA, and that's why, like, I'm happy about, like, Pete Buttigieg being appointed as transportation secretary, and like I was saying, hopefully some members of the FAA that left will come back, and things will start working again, and we will have more input. Let's see, regarding some of the other comments, Jennifer Landisman, thank you for bringing up about the ANA symposium, the A&E symposium. I actually got information about it the other day, and I'm having our staff look into it. So I'm planning to attend it and get some more information. And I'm glad you brought up about health, because I know at the last symposium there was a topic regarding health, and I was so excited, and I attended it, and it turned out not to be anything like what I thought it was going to be. So it frankly, it wasn't, I didn't find it beneficial. So I'm glad to hear that there's another health topic in this next A&E symposium. Let me see. I think it was Darlene. Darlene always has great comments. Thank you so much, Darlene. And I wanted to just ask, I know Darlene had made a comment about Steve putting the paper into a format similar to the noise paper that Glenn had put together. My concern is, well, I think Steve is retiring this Friday, and I don't know if he's going to be around to do something like that. So, or maybe if Chris will be taking over those duties or what. But anyway, I that was my question regarding that. And I mean, I appreciate all of the comments, and I've written everything down again, and who said what, and actually, if some of you don't mind, I might just give you a call to just make sure I understand exactly your comments, to make sure I incorporate, because like I said, you all have a lot of great knowledge, and that I really appreciate, and that's phenomenal. And I'd like to talk to you some more, and so we get this paper right, and so for distribution. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Kathy. Steve, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to mention to respond to Kathy, just to clarify in terms of my ongoing role. Yes, I am retiring from ESA on December 31st. However, my last day in the office, this office here, in my home, will be this Friday. However, ESA has offered, the Santa Clara Cities Association has accepted that if my help is needed, I would be available on an independent contractor basis, so that Chris and Evan could use me as a resource as needed. So don't be concerned about me not being available. I will be around, and certainly ESA can use me as needed. The primary changes, I'm going to try to limit my hours, working hours, to be Tuesday through Thursday, but we'll see how that goes.
Famous last words.
Thanks, Steve. I guess as we heard the comments from the public, it really hit home to me how different this topic is than noise metrics. And it is much more challenging to put together a piece that we can use on a difficult topic. So I appreciate your work on this, Kathy. You've got a challenge here. I do think it's important to separate out the health and environmental impacts from the noise metrics. So I agree with the public comments on that. And I kind of feel like on this paper, it's a little bit different, that I feel like we need one more round of this, if others do, to come back to the Ledge Committee. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Before it goes to the roundtable. We've got the other one we can take there. And I don't know if this is, Kathy, if you're going to do another round, or if you're going to work, or if ESA is going to do the next round, or do you want to work together on it? What's the best approach? I kind of leave it up to you all to figure that out. I don't know if we have the budget for ESA to work on it. So I'd look to ESA to let us know.
I heard, Glenn's comment earlier about, concerns about the budget. And I know we've had that discussion as a roundtable. So I totally understand. But I, like I said, I appreciate, all the input, and I think, by focusing on health and environmental impacts, and I know there's been some great information shared by members of the public, that I'm happy to take another stab at it. And just so Jennifer from Sunnyvale knows, this is the second draft, not the first one. And I'm happy to take another stab at it. Now, when would we need this back then for review? Or
I would say we would at the next Ledge Committee meeting, because we'd have to review it before we would suggest it going to the full roundtable. We don't have that scheduled yet, but I believe the plan is that, the roundtable meets in January, and then the Ledge Committee and the Technical Working Group could have meetings in February and March. Is that right? And then the roundtable in April. So we would shoot to have another Ledge Committee meeting in February or March, to then take it to the roundtable in April.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
And, Madam Chair, I would just add, this type of work that we're doing on these position papers, it's not a heavy lift for us. We don't spend a huge amount of hours on it. So I would suggest that, Kathy should certainly take advantage of our expertise and help. And maybe the appropriate way to proceed is have Kathy do this next rewrite and draft, and then run it by us to take a look at it. And certainly we could easily reformat it as well to be consistent with the noise metrics position paper.
Sounds good. Thank you, Steve. I will take you up on that.
That sounds good to me. And I don't think we need a motion on that, because it's just doing the next round. Okay. Any other comments on this topic? I don't see any blue hands. Okay. Gosh, we're going to end early. So thanks, everyone. Glenn?
Yeah, I hope I'm not stealing your thunder, but I just wanted to go ahead and say thank you to Steve. We've been working here on this stuff for a couple of years now. It's a little bit different when it's online like this and stuff, but I've always appreciated your thoughts and comments, the input from your team and stuff of what's going on. Best wishes, following winds or whatever the saying is and stuff like that. And all the best in whatever you're going to go do next in your life. So, but thank you
very much.
For the assistance along the way.
You bet. It's been my pleasure. And I look forward to continuing in some manner to assist the roundtable.
Will you be presenting at the symposium, Steve?
I am moderating a panel at the symposium on aircraft operations, and similar to the ones that we had last year where there were several airline representatives. We'll have a couple of airlines, and we'll also have an air cargo representative, which of course air cargo is playing a tremendous role in getting the COVID vaccine out to the various communities. So there'll be some discussion of that. And I did want to put in a plug, as Jennifer did. If you've not seen the announcement for it, ask Jennifer, she's on the program committee, or ask me, or take a look online. The beauty of this year is that it's a virtual symposium, so don't have to fly to some location. It's a very condensed amount of time, and you can pick and choose which sessions you want to be involved with. And as always, there's a great program that's been put together on it. And also, while I have the floor, see, Lisa thought we were going to end on time. That's not going to happen. No, is that I do want to make a plug. One of our community members alluded to it earlier, that Chris Sequeira gave an excellent presentation on the FAA's NEPA process at yesterday's technical working group. That, of course, was recorded. And I think it would be beneficial for the individual Ledge Committee members to take a look at that on their own time and kind of build up their background on it, because it is true that at some point in time, you might be handed something from the technical working group to take a look at improving the FAA's NEPA process. So just a suggestion.
Thank you. And I will echo the comments of Glenn. We really do appreciate all the work you've done with us, Steve. And I'm glad to hear you'll continue to be involved. So this is not goodbye. It's just happy change.
Right. It's see you later.
See you
in 2021.
Yeah. So, okay. I think that's it for today. So thanks, everyone. I appreciate it. And we will circle back with a meeting date for the next one. And yeah, let's hope for a happy new year in 21.
Happy holidays. Stay safe, everybody.
You too.
Bye now. So the meeting's adjourned at 3:19. Thanks.
Excellent.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.